It's an interesting question, particularly in the context of recent spread compression across private credit, public credit, and SRT's not been immune. When you open the box on SRT, it's actually not one asset class. It's quite heterogeneous. And key differentiators include what type of loan portfolios you're targeting in SRT. So you can see it fairly straightforwardly. If you have an SRT transaction where the reference loans are levered loans, that's going to have a very different risk-reward profile from an SRT transactions where, say, the reference loans are subscription line. And so you're thinking about relative value in relation to the right comparables for the underlying loan portfolio types that you're targeting. On the spread compression side, yes, we've seen quite material spread compression over the last 12 months or so. But as I said, this has been across private credit, public credit markets. And from our analysis, SRT spread movements have not been out of line with those. What has happened, which is interesting, is the spread compression has not been even across the different subsectors within SRT. And that's actually increased the heterogeneity and the relative attractiveness of one section of the market, one subset of loan portfolio types over another. On the LP part, I think was the second part of your question. So the SRT market has actually been around in its current form, I think, for around 18 years now. It started in 2007, which was just before Basel II was implemented for banks globally. And SRT, as a means of obtaining capital relief, was in Basel II. But the awareness of the space has really exploded over the last few years. So a lot of the LP interest has come in over the last few years, and they've seen a relatively short history of the market, have observed the spread compression. It's relatively new to many LPs, and there's just caused a bit of a pause. Should we be further allocating to it? But if you look back over the whole history, we've seen this before. We've had periods of spread compression. There are definitely ways to manage that and to handle it. And I think when LPs see further into the market and they get more comfortable with it, they'll see that this is no different to previous episodes. On the supply side, I think we're going to see further steady growth this year. The trend rate of growth over the last few years has been 20 to 25% per annum in terms of new issuance amounts. The next 12 months will be similar. Further out, we see more accelerated growth, perhaps 30 to 40%, when some regulatory issues have been tidied up. So there's going to be a healthy amount of supply this year. The demand side's interesting insofar as there was a lot of excitement about SRT at the beginning of last year, and there were some quite bold assertions made about how rapidly it would be possible to scale capital into this market. And I think as the years progressed, some of that has been brought back to reality. SRT is growing. It's a decent market, but in the end, it's a $30 billion market. It's not a $300 billion market yet. We might get there. So what I expect to see is plenty of good demand for the supply that's going to come. I'm confident it'll all be filled, but we might just have a little less of the kind of froth and noise surrounding that we had over the last 12 months. Well, regulators have clearly been wanting to understand more about this, but I don't see any cause for concern. The first thing to say is that no bank has or would provide leverage against its own SRT transaction. That clearly wouldn't make sense. So leverage in relation to SRT is most commonly provided through either the repo market or increasingly through net asset value fund level financing. On the repo side, there are plenty of safeguards for the leverage providers. So repo in SRT is commonly provided with haircuts of between 40 and 50%, daily margined, and typically with recourse to the funds. On the NAV financing side, there your security is effectively a portfolio of diverse SRT transactions if you're a lender. You've got many of the same triggers and safeguards, margining or cash sweeps, and typically LTVs, loan to values, are a little bit lower. So there's a lot of safeguards on the leverage side. And I think the last thing I'd say about it is that for many years, bank capital instruments like AT1s and even bank equity sitting in investor portfolios have been levered by banks, and nobody seems to have been concerned about that. So I don't really see why SRT should be any different. Well, this symposium is one of my favorite SRT conferences. There are always some original perspectives from speakers, new ideas. I like to go away. That's always good food for thought when you hear some of those perspectives. And then the other thing about it is the SRT market is fundamentally a relationship-driven market. So banks want to have constructive dialogues with investors. They want confidence over certainty of execution. They want to make sure their confidential information is protected. So there's not much tolerance for bad behavior in this market. So what does that mean? It's actually got some very nice people in it, both on the bank side and on the investor side. And this is a great opportunity to catch up with those people in the breaks, those good people in the drinks, and so on. So it's a very enjoyable conference as well. I think we will certainly be continuing to discuss the US market and its evolution. There are a number of regulatory and legal structure issues that make it a little bit messy at the moment, but on both the bank side and investor side, people would love to see tidied up. That may take some time. After all, it's taken more than 15 years for the European market since inception to evolve to the current status. So one wouldn't expect that to all be resolved overnight in the US. I'm sure we're still going to be discussing that. The other thing that has not been discussed much in conferences in recent years is the macroeconomic environment, because it's been fairly benign. But we now have a new US administration, a lot of changes in geopolitics, in alliances and so on, and that inevitably will have a macroeconomic impact in one form or another. And the other important thing is interest rates have normalized in most developed countries. So we've gone away from zero interest rates. We now have positive rates, positively sloped yield curves. That usually means more credit spread volatility. So I'm sure we're going to be discussing a bit more about macroeconomics next year. And probably the growth of the market is going to be a continuing discussion. One of the nice things about SRT is as more banks issue, it encourages other banks to dip a toe in the water, do their first issue, and when they've done one, they realize how effective it is for balance sheet management, balance sheet optimization. So there is a sort of network effect in SRT. The more banks that are doing it, the bigger the market gets because it attracts other banks to the market. So we'll definitely be talking about further growth.